Hi everyone, welcome back to the next Forecast Forge video explanation. We're starting where we left off last week. I've just added some labels, otherwise the spreadsheet is the same. So we have a forecast made using the Forge forecast custom function, and then we have a forecast that was made using the sidebar. Now, something you might notice about both of these forecasts is that the lower bound column here and here has a lot of negative values. Might even be that all of those values are negative. Oh no, not quite. And we are forecasting sessions here, and the lowest value that sessions can take is 0. It can't be negative. You're using algorithmic forecasting models quite a lot, that they'll forecast a negative trend into the future, and then a negative forecast into the future for something that can't ever be negative. Or, as we see in this case, the lower bound is negative even though the actual expected value of the forecast is positive. And this is to do with the algorithm, with the model behind the forecast. You can use a different model that wouldn't suffer from this problem, but then if you wanted to forecast something that could go negative, like profit, for example, then that wouldn't work and you need a different model again. So the approach that Forecast Forge takes with this is to do it through data transformations. The idea there being that we do some transformation on these numbers, then we make a forecast, and then we do the inverse transformation on the way back to get back to something that's on the same scale or whatever as those. And the idea is that we want to pick a transformation that is always positive if the thing we're trying to forecast is always positive. So an example that most of you will be familiar with is if you square a number, you always end up with a positive number. So I'll demonstrate that first. So the idea is that after we've made the forecast, we then want to square those values, which means that for these numbers we need to start off with the square root. So we can make our forecast of this in the same way as we did before. The date column is the same. But then our metric column is now in column K. This was UK data. Let's check that I used UK data over here as well. Yes. Okay, so that will load, and then once it's loaded we need to do the inverse transform, which in this case is squaring. There we go. And just put a little column in between those two there. There we go. So we can see the lower bound there is always positive because we've made it a square, and add it to the chart to see what difference that makes, and add it to the chart to see what difference that makes. so we'll see it's forecast slightly lower here than it has done otherwise, and that's because of the transform that we've used when we've taken the square root. So the square root tends to squash things together a bit in the forecast, so that's the same as what we've seen there. Another one we can do that you might have heard of before is a log transform. So whereabouts are we now? We're all the way. Let's label these up. Let's do log 10, just because that makes it slightly easier to understand for those of you who haven't come across logs before. Yeah, so we've done the logs, and then we do our forecast. This time the metric is in column T. So the inverse of a log is exponentiation, which so that's 10 to the x in this case, because we've taken logs base 10. Taking its sweet time here. Okay, sometimes when it hangs like this, you can just refresh the spreadsheet, and that will solve it. Yeah, there it is. Let's add a few more columns in. Oh, we're going to need them. Too far. There we go. Loading again. That's not what I was. Anyway, so these will be 10 to the power of whatever appears here. Again, it seems to be. Yeah, alright, there we are. Log. Add it to the chart. And see, log squashes it even more than the square root does. So we've seen it. We see a way. The peak is much lower. Okay. Now there's one more that I want to talk to you about. Let me insert one to the right. Insert a few more to the right. And that's known as the Boxcox transform, which is a little others. In some circumstances, it is equivalent to the log transform, but it has a little bit of extra flexibility. And we have a custom function for that called forge Boxcox. Here we go. Remind me of the help here. Yeah. Okay. So first we have first input is the number. I'll give it the if I give it the range, this will load quicker than if I just give it the original thing. The second one is one called lambda. Let's start off with that as 0, and then we can leave the minimum here. The minimum is for if you have values that are below 0. The default value for the minimum is 0. Okay, so Boxcox. Now, the idea with Boxcox, let's insert one to the left. So we have this value called lambda. Let's start off with that as 0. I want to be able to easily adjust lambda. So let's put it in this box here. Great. Okay, so the idea we want to pick a we want to pick the value of lambda in quite a specific way. Histogram. Okay, so yes, we want to pick it so that this histogram looks like it is normally distributed. Why is it inserted that way down at the bottom there? That's no good to me. Copy, delete, go back up to the top, paste. Okay, so that's 0, and we can see we've got this sort of long tail going out this side, and then not on the other side. So that's not what you see with something that's normally distributed. So let's just shift this around slightly. 0 minus 0.5. It's loading. So yeah, so that's a little better, a little bit more symmetrical. Okay, so that's squashed everything into a tiny range in the middle. I think I'm going to stick with 0.5 there. Oh, not minus 5, go on now. Minus 0.5. Okay. And then we make our forecast. It's not in B, it's AD2 to AD1325. Wait for that to load, and then we have there's another custom function called inverse Boxcox to help us go the other way back to our predictions. And I'm going to run out of columns. Fat fingering this mouse today. Don't know why I'm not getting my help. Yeah. And then we need the lambda value, which is up here. And we need the lambda value, which is up here. So it knows how to make the name. Oh. What's the name of the function? Forge. Yeah, Boxcox, all one word. All one symbol thing. Hey, and label this column up. Add it to the chart just to see where we're at. There we go. So again, that's smoothed it out even more. I think that's actually quite a poor fit, the Boxcox on there, and I like the square or the log forecast quite a lot better. Now, I've recently added these into the sidebar as well. So you can select a transformation here. You can have none. You can have the Boxcox. You enter the minimum value, which for most things will be 0. The value of lambda is automatically figured out on the back end, and the final one here is what's called a legit forecast, and that's for things that are bounded both below and above. So you might use that for something that's a percentage, like conversion rate or bounce rate, where it's always greater than 0%, but it's also always less than 100%. I'll give you an example of that next week. Alright, that's all for now, and happy forecasting.